Hey y'all. Gonna let people get in, get situated. I'm gonna grab my drink. Y'all grab your favorite drink and your snack, and we'll get started in a minute. Let me know when you get in. Tell me your name, where you're coming in from. I'm so glad this is working out much easier than the last few we tried. So, yeah. All right. Got y'all all set. So, while we're waiting for people to get here, because we are 4 minutes early, I wanted to make sure everything's set up like it was supposed to. Perfect. Now, let me make sure it's showing live on YouTube. Perfect. It shows it. Now, I'm going to share this. And y'all, if you didn't know, there is a Facebook group that I created with Zam. Excuse me. Where we can talk one on one. I can give updates on videos. People can have input. Let me put this in here. Okay. Now, we let them know. Anyway, I created a YouTube channel or group that allows people to come in and get a more immediate response to their questions. There we go. Let me tell the other group chat, because we have two. All right. Oh. There you go. All right. So all that is good. Okay. Now, as you come in, we still have a few more minutes. So we're going to let people come in, do their stuff. Y'all look at my nails. They're horrible. I need to update them. I'm in desperate need of a manicure. Can you tell? Anyway, we're going to let people populate, come into the live, get situated. Then we're going to go over questions, one that were asked ahead of time in group, because I gave them a chance to submit their questions they may have that they wanted to see answered when we do this live. So I have my handy dandy notebook. Oh, wow. Let me fix that, y'all. All right, that's good enough. Hey, you can see, and I'll line it up so I know. Oh, it's mirrored. Let's change it so it's not mirrored. That's better. Now you can read it. All right, we're going to talk about the different resins and all of that. Like I said, we're going to let people filter in. And as we do that, give it a few more minutes because it is just now 12 o'clock. All right. There we go. All right, y'all. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes to let people stroll in. I am testing a new setup because, as y'all know, if you've been here, it's been hit or miss with these lives. So hopefully we have a hit this time. Why is this showing sideways? There we go. I'll use that for my reference. Y'all know these are my favorite things. So let's get started. I had a question posted in my Facebook group, which y'all can find by searching Cats Beginners Resin Group, and I will put a link. Let me do this now. I'm going to put a link here. There we go. Paste. Send. Pin the message. All right, so there's the link to the Facebook group. If you haven't joined that Facebook group, make sure you do, because we have a lot of great information. We have giveaways there. It's your chance to ask questions, show pictures with something maybe you're struggling with, and let us help you find a solution to your problem. So the Facebook group link is pinned. So you just click that link. It'll take you to Facebook and join the group from there. We're always happy to help beginners. And it's a friendly group. It's not nasty. We don't tolerate that. There's no bullying. There's no making fun of people. None of that. I keep it very safe. Zam helps me keep it very safe. We want a group that will help beginners feel comfortable asking questions that most of us all had when we started out. So you're not alone there. There's no dumb questions or silly questions. Ask away, I say. So for our first question that I want to address came from one of our Facebook group members, Diana Coughlin. If you're here, thank you for the question. Why would one side of a small round pour be soft? It's a keychain and the top is still sticky. So let's talk about the difference in a larger piece curing as compared to a smaller piece curing. And I'm going to grab a larger piece. And do I have a... yes. I do have a smaller one. Let's move that out. All right. We're just going to take this out and not have that fall over compared to a smaller piece, right? So our larger piece, excuse me, will hold more volume, right? It takes more resin to fill this piece up as compared to the amount of resin for this piece. And logically, you would think, oh, there's less resin here, it won't take as long to cure. Well, let me explain how curing works. You have two parts of resin. You have a part A and you have a part B. And each part has molecules. And to cure resin, each molecule creates friction together to create the heat to turn it into a solid hard plastic. Now, when you have a bigger piece, you have more workers in your big piece. So they're going to do their work a lot faster and get it done a lot quicker than the crew that only has like 10 workers. They'll get the job done. It's just going to take them longer because they have fewer workers than this big piece. So for smaller pieces, I always say if it's sticky or soft and bendy, that's another thing that a lot of people ask about. Why is my piece still bending? Because those smaller pieces take longer to cure. So leave it on a flat surface. Don't put it over anything unless you want to shape it that way. Because if you put it over something that's round, it's going to bend and it's going to cure. Gravity is going to pull it down while it's still soft. And when you pull it off, it's going to be a concave piece. So I say give smaller pieces a week. Leave it on a flat surface so it doesn't, out misshapen. That's the best way. So there's your lesson about why big things cure faster than smaller pieces and why they're still soft and bendy after you take them out. So we'll set these, well, let's leave this big one out because this is a great example. A lot of people ask me, I'm trying to figure out this camera. There we go. A lot of people ask me, what is a flash cure? What does that even mean? How do I know if I have one? So a flash cure, I use the analogy of going to the prom in Dirty Dancing. I know. That's the best one I could come up with, y'all. And it's one you'll remember, I promise. So if you have a prom that's being held in a gym, it's packed full of kids, right? Raging hormone teenagers in that gym. Start dancing and start, right? So what happens is you have part A and part B. They're dirty dancing, creating friction and heat. And if you have a whole gym full crammed into one area, it gets too hot too fast, and that is a flash cure. That will make your piece really, really hot, like hot to the touch. You may see smoke coming off. If you do, you need to get that outside because the fumes coming off of a flash cure are very dangerous. So get it outside, let it do its thing. I have had a couple pieces begin the flash cure process, and I was able to save them by putting ice packs around my piece to bring the temperature down quick. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have issues with bubbles and, micro bubbles, because what happens in a flash cure, it cures too fast and it locks little bubbles in. So if you have a piece that has a lot of micro bubbles, more than likely it's from a flash cure. So there's that. Now, how do you prevent this? Well, just like at a high school prom, you have chaperones, right? So you take 20 kids out of the gym, you put them in the library. You take 20 more, you put them in the cafeteria. You take 20 more and you put them in another room. And it's much easier for a chaperone to keep watch over 20 kids as it is a whole gym full of kids crammed into one area. So what does that mean for resin? It means If you mix a big amount of resin, you need to pour it out into smaller containers. So it has less workers creating the heat, right? Remember that conversation? That will stop or make it less likely that you'll get a flash cure. So mix in a big container is fine, but as soon as you're done mixing, pour it into smaller containers for you to add your colorants, whatever you're going to add to create your project. That is the safe way to prevent flash curing. So there's that. Now let's talk about the different resins because they all have different properties and different uses, and some are better for certain techniques than others. And what do I mean? Hey, when y'all come in, make sure you tell me where you're from. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment. So let's talk about regular resin first. And that is just resin like this. You have an A, you have a B. It can say it's crystal clear resin, pure glossy resin. It can say all kind of different things, but it's just a 1v1 resin. Here it says high gloss, crystal clear, self-leveling. This is a 1v1 resin. That means you take one part of A, mix it with one part of B, and mix it together, pour it in your project. Now, mixing resin, measuring resin, your instructions are going to tell you how to measure. And most of the time, it is 1v1 volume. This doesn't have it on the bottle, but I know they have it on the website. So double check your brand. Very, very, very rarely there is a brand that says you need to measure by weight. So then you would measure by grams to get weight. You can still use a scale for volume. You want to use fluid ounce or milliliters. That will give you, and you can see here, 16 ounces is what is on the bottle. See that? So they measure the resin by fluid ounces. So you want 4 ounces of resin, let's say. On your scale, you're going to make sure it's set to fluid ounce. You're going to pour 2 fluid ounce of A, 2 fluid ounce of B, mix them together. And let's talk about mixing real quick while we're here. There is no set time for mixing your resin. You mix your resin until it is clear and there are no streaks or jellyfish hanging out. That's what I call it because I don't know any other way to describe it. But when you're mixing your resin, you'll see streaking where you have the two separate parts that are still separated and not completely combined. You want to make sure you scrape the sides of your cup, scrape the sides, scrape the bottom, and scrape your stick off when you're doing that because you don't want any weak spots in your resin. And that brings us to another question that somebody had. Say one little area of their coaster is soft and it's not setting up or curing at all. That is because that is a weak spot that didn't get completely mixed together, or it may have been on the side of the cup when you poured it in that you didn't scrape the sides really good, and that little part poured into your coaster. So that's what that means. So it's important to make sure you scrape down the sides, the bottom. I do that at least twice while I'm mixing my resin, and I scrape my stick off at least twice while I'm mixing my resin to make sure that everything is combined and I don't have issues. Now, that is regular resin. Let's talk about fast cure resin that we have here, right? Fast cure. And what is fast cure? Fast cure means that it will be cured, ready to be taken out of the mold within 4 hours. That's what fast cure means. It is thicker resin than your regular resin. which can be beneficial for certain techniques, but there's a time factor. When you're mixing part A and part B of a fast cure, it tells you you have, let's see, it tells you 4 hours to demold, right? 4 hours to demold. Trying to get that to, but it only has a 20-minute working time. And 20-minute working time goes by very quick. That means from the time you pour A and B and they're together in one cup, your clock has already started. So that means mixing everything, making sure it's combined and clear and everything is mixed well, adding any colorants that you want, pouring it into smaller cups. All that has to be done. You're mixing your colors and have it poured into your mold within 20 minutes. And trust me, that goes by so fast. So I always recommend, if you're going to use a fast cure, have your cups set out. Have it all set out with what colors you want to use. Have your mica powder in. Have, your paste ready on a stir stick. That's just for that cup of resin. Have everything ready to go. So once you mix your resin completely, you pour it into these cups. You can mix it all, because all these have to be mixed too. So you're ready to pour into your mold that you want to use. Hey, Linda. So glad you made it. Do you have any questions? I'm going over the different types of resin right now. If you have something that you're struggling with or are unsure about that you want an answer to, let me know and I'll cover it. So we talked about fast cure resin. It can be a plus, but it can also be a curse, because fast cure resin cures fast, right? And that means that it locks bubbles in. It doesn't have a longer time to naturally allow bubbles to disperse. We'll have to put you up there. There you are, Linda. We'll put you in the spotlight. Anybody else want in the spotlight? Go ahead, comment. I'll put you there. So that's fast cure. Now let's talk about deep cure, which is deep cure like so. A deep pour, not a deep cure. What that means, deep pour resin is very thin like water. Okay. So it's great because it has a longer time for bubbles to naturally release on their own. That's great, because you have less chance of bubbles if you use a deep pour resin than you would if you have a regular or a fast cure resin. But the downside is it takes days to cure. So there's a trick there. You get better bubble release, but it takes longer to cure. And this does have limitations as to how thick you can pour it too. There is a limitation to your layers. And I think this one, yeah, and it says 2 to 4 inches is your layer limit for the deep pour. Anything over 4 inches, you need to wait, let this set up, and then pour another layer. And I will tell you, this is also a 2-to-1 ratio. And that means it is 2 parts A to 1 part B. I want to make sure I said that right. So if we want to pour 6 ounces, let's say. For the deep pour, it would be 4 ounces of A and only 2 ounces of B. That's what keeps the resin thin like water. It's because we have more A in it. So there's that. Make sure you check your limitations and never pour to that limit. So if it says 4 inches, I don't like to pour over 3 myself, because that lessens the chance that I'm going to have a flash cure. That's crazy. And if you missed that, Linda, you can go back after I end the video I talked about flash cures and going to the prom and dirty dancing. I explained it in a way you'll never forget. So there's that. Let's talk about something that's becoming very popular, and I love it myself. And it's this pre-colored resin. Black is already in here. This is part A, and it already has black in it. See that? Look at that. So I love this for backing my pieces or doing a bottom. If I'm pouring a piece bottom up, I like pouring this in. It's all, you don't have to worry about lumps. You don't have to worry about streaking from your pigment paste. You don't have any of that worry when you mix this. Now, the only thing is you can't see streaking very well like you would, and you can't see if it's clear. But I can tell you from mixing resin and using this, you're going to know by the way it feels when you're mixing it. If there's no resistance, then it's mixed properly. If there's still some resistance when you're stirring, then you need to stir a little longer. But I love that they made that, and it comes in different colors. I think I saw they have turquoise, they have white. So check those out. Those are cool. And this is not sponsored by anybody, y'all. I'm doing this on my own. These are things that I have bought for myself to share with you and show you how they work. Now, the other kind of resin that I want to talk about is UV resin. And a lot of people ask questions about that. There are a lot of rules with UV resin. But those have been kind of taken out of the way now that we have these pre-colored UV. Get that so it zooms in better. There you go. These are pre-colored. So all we do is we take this from the bottle, pour it into our piece, cure it with a UV light, and it's done. And we don't have to worry about, is it transparent enough? Is my UV light going to get all the way through? Or am I going to have issues? You're not going to have issues because this is formulated to cure, even though it looks opaque. So those are something we have been asking for a long time. Last year we started getting them. I'm super excited. These are the pearlescent ones. They're beautiful, y'all. If y'all are like me and you like that shimmer, there you go. Perfect. What other resins do we want to talk about? I think that's all the liquid resins. But I want to talk about this plaster-like. Call it Resin-Crete, Jesmonite, Pure Cure. T-Expert had this a while back. They stopped making it. I wish they would make more. But this is Let's Resin version. It's like a plaster-like mix. It mixes with powder and water, and it is a 3-to-1 by weight. This one you do measure by weight, so you use grams on the scale. Excuse me. So you have 3 parts powder to 1 part water. So if we want to do 30 grams of powder, it would be 10 grams of water to make that. And let me tell y'all, that plaster sets up very quickly. So be careful. Make sure you have everything laid out, ready to go, and you have extra silicone molds laying around in case you mixed up too much, you have something to pour it into. But the biggest thing with that, I love it because it cures fast, one thing, but you have to be careful. A lot of them will say you can pull it out in 45 minutes. Don't do that because you're going to lose tails and wings and things like that. In fact, let me grab this one. Just talking about this actually. So let me show you what I mean. Here we go. So, ta-da! We have some pieces. Now, I pulled this out too early, and I lost part of the wing. So, to avoid that, you let this sit and cure longer because this Resin-Crete cures by evaporation. The water evaporates off, and this gets stronger. So, and I have pieces here, but I have a video where I showed you how you can color it. And really it's a very simple premise to coloring this powder. If your colorant is a powder like mica, you mix the mica in with the powder before you mix the water. If your colorant is water-based, like acrylic paint or some dye, resin dyes, you mix it in the water before you mix it with the powder. And that will make it hold its color and transfer easy. I did try some too where I brushed mica on the mold and then poured the resin-crete in. It's hit or miss. So I wouldn't say do that. But you can also make a marble effect. I show you how to do that. You can put little terracotta pieces, or maybe you want to use some aquarium rocks in yours. So there's all kinds of different things you can do with this. I love it. It makes great plant holders and all that. And I also have a mold that makes these little cats. It has a bear and a bunny. And I make these blanks and I put it in a little package with either the flip top acrylic paints and a paintbrush or the, excuse me, acrylic paint pens. And I'm making a little kit. And I made these for a friend who, their little one was having a birthday party. These were favors. These were goodie favors. And she bought a bunch of them and handed them out as favors at the party. Another one used them at Sunday school, and another had like a tea party for their kid. And they gave them this as an activity to do. And then they could take it home as a little souvenir. So I use them for ornaments. And this I just colored with my metallic paint pen to highlight the details. So this is a great alternative. One, if you're pregnant, it keeps you away from the chemicals that are in resin. You can still do projects with your silicone molds and do it safely. And it's something kids can do without fear of being exposed to chemicals. It's a lot of fun, y'all. I love doing this. And I recommend it for anyone who might be going through chemotherapy, has cancer, because you're not going to get that chemical exposure by using this magic pour resin-crete, jesmonite, whatever you want to call it. You're not going to get chemical exposure, and you can still use your silicone molds. So if you want to break from resin, there you go. Here's an alternative. I love that, and it's a safe one. So is there anything anybody else to ask or talk about? I'm going to do this. Y'all, I can do something fun. Let me do this. I am giving away some memberships right now. So, there we go. Just threw out some memberships. Let's see who gets them. If you're here, raise your hand. Love it. So there we go. We gave away some memberships today. That's awesome. If you're getting anything out of this and you want to donate, you can give a super thanks, a super chat. All those questions get to the front of the line. Or you can just buy me a coffee. And I'll put the link to that. In fact, I'll just put it in here. If you want to buy a coffee, you can do it by clicking this link. And we're going to talk about colorants in a minute. And I don't want to make this super long video because our attention spans are not very great. There you go. If you want to buy a coffee, you can do so there. There we go. We'll put that as a pin message. There we go. All right. So let's talk about colorants real quick. And if you're in the Facebook group, I have created a graph. And I can't upload it here, I don't think. No, it's not going to let me. So if you're in the Facebook group, or you can look at any of my videos that are saved in a playlist, a lot of them, especially if they're talking about colorants, I created a graph that explains from your heaviest colorant to your lightest colorant. So we go heavy to light and how they work. Your heaviest colorants are your pigment pastes and your resin dyes that you squeeze, and they make your resin completely solid, a solid color. Now your resin pastes are heavy and they're like a brick. Once you put it in your resin, it stays where you put it. It's not going to move around. You could try moving it. It's not going to move easy. It's going to stay put. That's why we like resin paste, especially on like geodes and things like that, where you want your colors defined and separate. So that's what resin paste does. Now your dyes and your inks are the same thing. They're not as heavy as your paste is, but they will make your resin a complete solid color. And you can get a little bit of movement out of them, but not a lot. Then we move to our mica powders, which are micas like so. When you mix mica into your piece, and depending on the shape of your piece, like if you have a round piece and you put mica in your piece, it's going to automatically, mica always moves to the middle. Mica move. There you go. So it always moves toward the center of your piece. So in a round piece, you will have striations like an eyeball. And in a rectangular piece, you're going to have a line across the back. So if you do a bookmark and you use mica, you notice across the back of your resin, there's a line. That is why, because mica always moves toward the center of your piece. So that is something which can be a benefit. We want that in some of our pieces, right? We love that movement. In other pieces, we're like, no, I didn't want you to do that. So that's the difference of mica and a pigment paste. Then you move on to your transparent or your tint colors that will be see-through. They're never going to be solid. So if you put a transparent ink in resin, and I don't care if you use the whole bottle, it will never, ever, ever be opaque. It's always going to be see-through. So we say those are great. I use transparent colors for my ocean scenes. I'm sure some of y'all have seen those or seen the videos. I like using transparent colors because I like seeing the bottom. Like you can see through water, right? Now your darker navy blue parts, you can make a paste, or you can use a mica for that if you want some movement in the water. But for your shallower pieces, I suggest using transparent so you can see through the water. So that's what transparent in a tint is. Transparent is also very important if you're mixing your own colors with UV resin, because your UV resin has got to be see-through or transparent so light can penetrate completely through your piece and cure it. All right, let's move to the lightest of our colorants, and that is alcohol ink. Alcohol inks, if you notice, always float to the top. So I say they're like a helium balloon. They're always floating upward. So when you use an alcohol ink, you put it and it floats on the top like skims the water and does all kind of different movements and dances around. That is the easiest to move in your resin. That makes sense. So that is an overview of colorants. I'm trying to think, what else, Linda, what else do you think is important to cover for beginners? What did you struggle with in the beginning? I know, I'll stop singing. I need to wet my whistle. Marbling, that is one. I get a lot of questions about how do you marble? And people don't realize how easy it is, honestly. So I have my resin And I always, for my marbling, I always use white pigment paste as my base for my marbling technique. So what I do is I mix up my resin. I pour a little bit over here because I want my marbling color as well, right? So you have to have, and usually I use just a 3-ounce little bathroom cup because I don't need a whole lot. It doesn't take much at all to do this marble. So I have white pigment paste, a marble, and I have an extra cup that I'm going to do the marbling in. All of it. I agree. I was the same way. That's why I made that beginner's video, because I was so confused and so lost, and I had no idea what was what, if it worked together. Yeah, so I agree. All of it. Exactly. So what I did is I took my white paste and I pour a little in this cup, and I take my color. Let's say we're doing black, because that's a traditional marble, right? So I have resin and I've mixed a black colorant. I don't suggest using mica. I would use either an ink that you drop in there to color black, or use just a little bit of pigment paste and make your black that way. And then all I do is I take the stick that I mix my black with, and I'm going to drizzle some black into my white. Stop. That's it. Then I'm going to take a stick and I'm going to go down in my cup, pull it up. It's like folding. If you've baked before, you know how you don't stir things in, you fold it in so it doesn't create a lot of air, but you're like barely mixing it, combining. That's what you're doing here. You go straight down with your stick, pull it up, and just fold it in. Pull it up, fold it in. You're not mixing it, or it's going to be a gray. You don't want that. That's it. You do that twice, 2 times, and stop. That's it. And then you pour, and the higher you pour from your mold, the more creative marbling effect you're going to get. If you pour it real close, then it's just all going to fall out. So I pour, what's that? About 3 to 4 inches above my mold, and I do it slow. I let it slowly stream out, and I move it around to create that marbling, and you'll be shocked. It really isn't as hard as a lot of people. It's very intimidating. All right, Linda says, when you're using your mica powder, how do you clean your brush between colors? That's a great question. I always keep baby wipes handy when I'm at my workstation working. I have them pulled out, set aside, ready to go to clean my stick, because as soon as I'm done stirring something, I clean my stick immediately. Set it to the side, it's ready to use again. I don't have to wait and crack it and peel off resin. No. I clean it right then and there, put it to the side, let it dry. Done. Same thing with my brush. I'll have either a paper towel or a baby wipe, and I just take my brush and clean it off on the paper towel or the baby wipe. And after I've cleaned it, I brush it on my hand to kind of let it air dry if it's been wet. But that's how I clean mine. Very simple. And also, you can see I'm using a puppy pad. And this puppy pad also has a cotton side. And sometimes if I don't have a paper towel or something laying by, I flip my puppy pad, wipe my brush on the cotton side, cleans it off, go to the next color. So there's a little trick for you guys, because I have a lot of tips and tricks to show you. That was a great question, Linda. Thank you for asking that. Now, on to, let's see, what other tricks can I show you? That was marbling. Oh, a dirty pour. What is a dirty pour? People ask this all the time. Say I have 3 colors mixed, right? We'll do 3. So I have 3 colors mixed. Excuse me. Move our little disc out of the way. All right, we have 3 colors mixed, and I have a separate cup that I'm going to pour these into. Dirty pour. So I have red, green, white, let's say. So I pour in. I usually start with my darker color first. I'll put my dark color, my next dark color, and my lightest. And then I repeat that 2 or 3 times in the same order that I poured it in. Okay. So you've done that. You have your mix, and I pour just down the side of the cup. I don't pour it in the middle. I pour it so it's down the side so it doesn't start combining and mixing. Now, once I've done that, I hold my cup up and I actually turn it around from the side I poured it in. And then I, again, 3 to 4 inches above my mold, start pouring, and you get the same similar marble effect, but with multiple colors. That's what a dirty pour is. They're a lot of fun. You just let resin do its own thing, all that. It's great. I want to make sure that my battery is good. Awesome. Excuse that. All right. So, what else can I tell y'all that is top secret? Oh, let's talk about acrylic paint for a minute, because I get this question a lot too. Can I use acrylic paint to color my resin? Yes, you can color your resin with acrylic paint, but you have to be very, very, very careful when you do it, because acrylic paints are a water-based color, and water and resin do not mix. So when I am going to use an acrylic to color my resin, I actually use like a toothpick and dip it into my acrylic color that I want and put it in my resin that way. I'm telling y'all, you have to be very careful using acrylic paint in your resin, or it's not going to cure properly and you're going to have a problem. Oh, and let's talk about no fire when you're using silicone molds. I don't care if it's a flat coaster like we had before, and you think, oh, it's flat, it's no big deal, I can just run a lighter over it and it'll be fine. I'm telling y'all, the last year and a half, mold quality has gone way down. And if you use any kind of fire, like a torch or your long lighter, you run the risk of melding your silicone to your resin piece. And the only way to get it off is to rip your mold, and it's done. And sadly, I have had that issue with brand new molds I just got in. That's how I learned mold quality has really gone downhill. Before, it was no problem. 2 years ago, I could use a long lighter and get no problem at all. But because resin is very, very popular right now, and molds are very much in demand, they're gone into mass production. And the trade-off with that is the quality. So let's be real. So from now on, I do not use any kind of fire unless it is not in a mold. If I'm working on wow, let's collect some dust. That's crazy. If I'm working on a wood canvas piece, then I can use fire. I can use my torch. I can use a lighter. It's fine because it's on wood. But if I am using a mold, I now use 99% isopropyl alcohol. I put it in a bottle that's a spritz bottle, and I simply spray it over my projects. So I don't have that issue. It breaks the tension. So we don't have that as a problem anymore. And with my intricate molds like this has a lot of, little tiny pieces, nooks and crannies that you can have bubbles hide in. So I will spray the inside of my mold with the isopropyl alcohol. That gives more security that I'm not going to have a bubble trapped in there. And I also, here's another pro tip for you. When you're doing this, pinch and squeeze. You pour your first layer in. You pinch and squeeze the bottom. And pinching pushes any air or bubbles to the top and will suck back down the resin into that area. So you may have a little air pocket that you can see. Simply pinch it, squeeze it, let go, and it's going to suck the resin down into where that air pocket was. And you won't have as many bubbles because of that. So I do this in a few layers. Like this, because it has the top separate piece from the orb, I would pour half of this bird and pinch and squeeze to make sure that all that resin is down to the bottom of this piece. And I don't have any little air bubbles like the spike of his little head, any of that. So that's how you do that. Then I would fill it again up to where the bird ends. And I'm going to squeeze and pinch again to make sure all these little feathers and every little piece gets resin touching the mold and there's no little air bubbles hiding it. So pinch and squeeze is another pro tip that is very helpful. And even when you get toward the top and you see the little feet and the legs and the flowers, you can do the same thing for those little pieces and areas too. Just pinch it, squeeze it, make sure that it's all touching. And you can take a silicone tip tool, go down and rub into your mold where these little flowers and stuff are hiding to make sure there's no little bubbles hiding there too. But then after you pour a layer, spritz it with the isopropyl alcohol. Give it a few minutes, let the bubbles come to the surface and pop. Then you pour your next layer. Squirt with isopropyl alcohol. Same thing. Give it a few minutes, let the bubbles rise and pop. Because you have to have 91% isopropyl alcohol at the very least for this to work. And 91% or higher. I choose 99% because the higher the percent of alcohol, the faster it will evaporate off your piece. If you use anything under 91%, your alcohol is not going to evaporate. You're going to have a film on your piece, and you're going to wonder what happened. That's what happened. The alcohol sits there. Another good question. Humidity. You're on a roll. 72%. Humidity here is 72%. At what humidity is it okay to pour? I don't know if there's an exact percent that is okay, but what I would suggest is if you can, get a dehumidifier in your house. If you live somewhere that has a lot of humidity, as long as you're indoors and you're in a controlled temperature environment, because the humidity outside should not be what the humidity is in your house. It should be two separate numbers. And I don't know if there's something you can get to measure that inside your house. I'm very sure there is. And maybe there's an app on your phone. I don't know. I don't know that I would trust that. But the difference in what it is in your house as compared to outside does make a difference. Now, I will tell you this. A lot of people don't realize, and they cover their pieces to keep them from getting fur or dust particles or parts of their fur babies. Like I have two huskies. They have hair everywhere. So one way to protect that is people put a cover over their piece, right? So they put a cover over it and they don't realize resin heats up as it cures. So you're creating that moisture that you also get from humidity under your covering. And dew or water can accumulate on the underneath of your cover and drip little water droplets into your piece. And you have these little white specks and they're like, what is that? What happened? Is my resin bad? No, it's because the condensation built up and dropped onto your piece. So what I always suggest, yes, cover your piece, but I use pencils. I put those because I use an old Tupperware container I used to bring things to school when my kids were in school, cupcakes, homemade macaroni and cheese, and all that. It was in a big rectangle Tupperware thing, and I had the cover. So I don't use it anymore. Make sure if you use something like that, you don't use it anymore for food. That's not a good idea. So when I do that cover, I set it on top of pencils or something that keeps the lid from being completely on my table and will allow airflow to go through to get that heat out and not have condensation up top. Same thing with humidity. If you see little white specks on your piece, then I would say you're working in too high of humidity, because humidity is moisture in the air, right? So if that moisture is too high, then you're going to get these little white specks on your resin. That's how you're going to know. That's the best test. So I would say 72%. If it's outside, you should be fine. If you have a dehumidifier in your house, great. If you can't afford one, then just do a simple test. Pour a little piece and see how it reacts. If you see little white specks, there's too much humidity. Wait to pour later. I know that Sam, living in California, gets super hot, and during the summer, she can only pour at night because it's just too hot, because she opens her windows for ventilation. So if you're opening for ventilation, I would, if you're in a super hot environment like she is in California, Arizona, places like that, then I would either pour late at night, or I would pour in a controlled temperature environment and use a ventilator or have an air purifier. I have a big air purifier because I'm dealing with long COVID. So I have an air purifier in my house because of that. And I'm on oxygen 24/7. Y'all heard that story. So I have to be very careful too. But that's a great question about humidity. And, oh, that's the humidity inside your house. Okay, 72% should be okay. And like I said, do a test and see what happens. It may take longer for your piece to cure, so you may have to plan ahead. If you want a piece done tomorrow, then maybe you need to pour it 2 days ahead of time to offset that humidity. But 72% inside should be okay. I don't think it's going to be a problem. The only thing it will be a slower curing problem. Or not really problem, but cause and effect, right? So there you go with that. That was a great question. And I do get that question a lot. But I live in the mountains, and we have dry conditions out here. It does get hot because we're closer to the sun, but I don't have to deal with the humidity like I did down south. I don't miss that at all. And I don't miss walking bugs on a leash either. So that answers that. I hope that helps you. If not, let me know, and we'll do some research and find a better answer to that. What else did I want to cover with you guys? Oh, here is a sample of a dirty pour. There we go. So you can see the different ways that resin reacts. And this is just a dirty pour. I poured these colors together and poured them out onto the thinker. So that's an example of that. I'm trying to think. Anything else that I can cover really quick? Oh, let's talk about fillers. People ask all the time. You know, they have these little cute baby molds that make these cute little pieces, and they're like, what can I do with them? Well, you can use those in a larger mold where you can put the little pieces inside. Now, I'm going to get this figured out one of these days, y'all. I promise. You can put those little pieces inside like you would use aquarium rocks or crystal little pebbles, the core pebbles that you use for plants or whatever. You can put that inside a bigger mold, and that will be a filler. So it takes up less, well, it takes less resin is what I'm trying to say. If you have a filler in here, it takes less resin to fill up this big thing in resin. Let's see. This is a Let's Resin parrot mold. and it says 15.3. I love their molds. Give you exactly how much you need to fill this mold up. So 15.3 fluid ounces. So if I use the filler, like, what's something like little ghost or whatever, because I am starting Halloween stuff. So I have a mold that has little baby ghosts in it. I can make a whole bunch of ghosts. In fact, let's talk about skulls. That's a great thing. Little baby ghost put inside my skull and use those as fillers, and then pour my resin. Won't take as much resin because I have that filling up some space. That's a way you can keep your costs down, and that allows you to make more profit. So those little fillers are a great idea to use less resin, and you can use a filler that won't be seen from the outside. No one knows it's in there, but it costs you less resin to make the piece. So that's the way you could use some little things that we have molds that have little bitty pieces to make, little bears, little ghosts, little diamond shapes, or, things like that. So that's a cool little way to incorporate those. Or maybe you have some little pieces that didn't turn out like you liked. Shove them into a new piece. They're hidden. No one knows they're in there. And you can use less resin because you filled up. So not all of your pieces that don't turn out like you want are a lost cause. You can use them for something else. Oh, yeah. I get that. Southwest Missouri. It's getting time. We're getting close to fall. I'm super excited. Fall is my favorite time of year because I like that crisp, cold air. I can wear my hoodies and get all snuggled up. So, yeah, I love it. So, if you guys are just now coming in, you will be able, after this goes off and ends, when I end the video, you'll be able to go back and watch the beginning. And we're at the hour mark. I don't want to do these any longer than an hour because a lot of people fall out in the middle. They lose attention. They're just not interested anymore. So I want to start doing these every Friday, and I will make it from 12 Mountain Time, which would be 1 Central, 2 Eastern, and we'll go for an hour. And I'll either show you a new technique or we'll talk about some things that people are struggling with that I get a lot of questions about. But make sure that you are in the Facebook group. And I'm going to pin it again. Oh, let me go over here and pin it again. There we go. I pinned it back to the top because I want to leave it at the top when I end this. So if you're not in the Facebook group, join that. You can be quick in real time, ask answers, post your art. Let us see what you're making. Let us see how these tips and tricks helped you with your resin, and give us any tips or tricks that you may have learned. That group is all about sharing and celebrating wins and figuring out things that we may have a hard time with and finding solutions. We put our heads together and we come up with a way to fix it. So I appreciate you guys tuning in today. I want to do this every Friday, so be on the lookout. We're going to start making a Friday Funday every week, and we'll answer your questions and show you fun things to do. But until next time, y'all, make sure you do all the YouTube things. Click the like button. Subscribe if you're not already. Those are all free. It doesn't cost you anything. And it allows other artists to find us and get answers to questions that they have been looking for a long time. So until next time, y'all, happy arting. Ta-ta for now.